Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2017, and this is your Lake of the Ozarks fishing report for the Upper Osage, and this report is courtesy of Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. Right now in the Upper Osage here, late May, we're the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend. The lake is about 1.5 foot down from summer pool, so it's at 658.5. That's pretty much where it's been since the lake flooded and went up. They pulled it back down to this level, and probably going to kind of pretty much stay through this level through Memorial Day weekend. And then as soon as they get Truman Lake down to a manageable point, then they'll probably start raising this lake and get it to its summer pool, summer full. The water temperature today is in the high 60s, so pushing almost 70 degrees. So we're really right at the very end of the bass spawn for the upper lake area. Now, let me get back to the water conditions. The water color is still very, very muddy, very, very dirty. You can only see down about 1/2 foot, maybe a little bit more as you get to the back of a creek where the water is a little bit clearer, but you get out on the main lake, that water is dirty, and it's going to probably stay dirty for a while because Truman is still 20 feet high, and everything they're pumping out of Truman is mud, and that's just going to come pulling, just going to come right down the channel. So the people at Bagnell Dam are pulling the lake from the Lake of the Ozarks side, so that's hopefully pulling that mud through, and that's why we're getting some of that clearer conditions in the back of the creek, but they're really not that much clearer than the main lake. But there is a little bit more clarity on the back of the creek. But the fish are still biting. I think the fish eventually get used to all this mud and these conditions, and they've got to eat, so they just kind of find ways to do their thing, and so you can still catch some fish, you know, with all these conditions. The fish we're catching right now at this point, we're catching what I call the last group of spawners. We're still catching some fish in the spawning pockets, not as many as before, but they are still catching a couple good sized fish. And then we're also catching some post-spawn fish out on the points. You can catch those post-spawn fish on the secondary points, and then you can catch them on main lake points. What we targeted today for a short little while and had some success doing it was bluff ends, where the current from employing the water through the dams, through Truman Dam and then Lake of the Ozarks Dam, Bagnell Dam, they're pulling that water through, and some of these fish are setting up on these main lake bluff end points. Now, they're not really sitting out on the point in the current. They're sitting inside the point where the current's just a little bit, not as strong. So when you're going to fish these bluff ends, you want to fish inside the point and then fish your way around. That's kind of what the fish are doing right now. So here's the lures we're using to catch those fish. To catch those spawning fish, because the lake is so dirty, we're using jig. This is a Crocker Gator Zapper jig. I'm using a pocket crawl trailer on it with the aggressive flappers. That makes a lot of vibrations in this muddy water, allows those fish to find them. You can also use a brush hog if you're going to pitch these under the boat runways and so forth, if they're in behind the cables. Some of the fish we've been catching have just been back in some of these bare spawning pockets on some isolated logs or stuff, and so what I've been catching fish back on those is a squarebill crankbait or even the spinnerbait. Now, if you're going to use the spinnerbait in the upper lake area right now, you're probably best to use one that has a rounded Colorado blade. That's going to create more thump, more vibration, just allows the fish to track it a little bit better. Another bait you can use instead of a spinnerbait, which is also catching fish right now, works really good in these spawning pockets, also works good on these creek channel banks and points, is the chatterbait, or some people call it a vibrating jig. It's basically a jig with a blade on it, and as it runs the whole jig and everything, it makes it vibrating. So it's kind of a crankbait, spinnerbait, hybrid type bait. Now what I do with mine, I put a Zoom paddle tail trailer on the back of it, and then I actually add a trailer hook on my chatterbait. Doesn't seem to hurt the action that much. Pitch it out there, let it sink a little bit just out of sight, and then reel it in. And we're catching a few fish on this, and this bait's pretty easy to throw. You just throw it out there and swim it back. But the fish, because of the muddy water, we're kind of using this trailer hook. Kind of allows them to track a little bit more. And then you can still catch fish on the squarebill. Whoops. Still catch fish on this squarebill in and around these spawning pockets. Been mainly using the squarebill on the points, inside and outside of the spawning pockets, and on those bluff ends. That's what we've been doing. Normally, during this time of year, I'd be talking about topwaters, but can't really get a fish to take a topwater unless you put that topwater bait right over that log or that cover of that rock or off that dock corner where that fish happens to be sitting. Most of the time we just throw a topwater bait out there and we work it back, and the fish may hit it anywhere from where it started its retrieve back to all the way back to the boat. So and normally we'd be using baits like Ozarks spook, where we could walk it through a buzz bait, you know, the Crocker Gator head knocker buzz bait with the flat head, allows it to get up on plane easier, would be a good choice. Even a whopper plopper right now would be a good choice. My bait of preference this time of year when we get to the post spawn is a pop-R. It's a bait that you can twitch it, stop it, twitch it, stop it. But even right now, they're just not really loading up on these topwater baits. We're having some come swirl behind them in the back of the creeks where we get some clear water, but the creeks we fish, we did not have any big concentrations of fish in the back of the creeks, and the fish that we did catch in the back of the creeks, which weren't very many, they were pretty small. Our bigger fish were on the secondary points, and the main lake points is where they were. And when main lake points, I'm talking main lake points and those bluff ends. That's where our bigger fish are. And all those fish are post spawn. You can see their tails are beat up, their bellies are skinny, they look tired. They don't really hammer the bait when they hit it. They just kind of grab it, you know. So you can tell they're coming off the spawn. So they're definitely post-spawn fish. Now, something else we caught a few fish on, but again, you got to throw it right in on your target, is the power worm. Is worms, because the water temperature's in the 70s. You can use your soft plastics. For my worms, I like to use the Berkeley power baits. I just think they hold on to them longer than other traditional baits. Use your favorite worm, it'll work, but you got to really put it right on the cover of what you want to catch, because otherwise they're not going to, their strike zone is real small, these fish right now, because of the mud. They're not going to expand very far to go chase a lure. That's the bad news of that. The good news of the mud is that they're not going to be roaming around. They're going to be on cover. They're going to be laying on a rock, laying on a log, laying next to a seawall, back corner of a dock, so forth. They're going to be up against some common object, so you don't really have to go around searching for them that much. You can just pinpoint those objects and find them. And then, again, like I said, when you find those logs and stuff, you can throw the worm on them, and then you can throw the jig on them. That's what I like to do. Hopefully, as we go here for the next few weeks, this water will clear up a little bit. How it's going to clear, it's going to clear from back of the creeks out. That's what it's going to do, because there's so much mud out on the main lake. When they pull that water, it's going to pull the mud out of the creeks. So a lot of our topwater fishing will probably get better in the back of the creeks. As we move on into the summer, then I'll talk more about that main lake dock pattern, using that topwater baits and those dock patterns, catching some of those Kentuckys out on the main lake. But right now, that bite's pretty hard to come by just because of all the mud. So good luck in your fishing. Thanks for watching our videos. If you're not a subscriber to Bass and Bob, you might want to consider to do that. It's a great resource for Lake of the Ozarks fishing, not only just for bass, but also crappie. And good luck and be safe. Thank you.